Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. Today we are creating tilth at the top of the soil, and we take a question from the mailbag about invasive Chinese wisteria in wood chip form. So let's do it. All right, everyone, welcome to Tilth Tuesday, your weekly reminder that you can get living soil compost and potting mixes from the Bonafide Nerds at Tilth Soil. Check out Nathan on the Composter Podcast Season 4, Episode 3, or head to tilthsoil.com to learn more. I hope everyone is doing well today and the season is treating you nicely. Today we are discussing tilth without tillage, an appropriate topic for Tilth Tuesday if ever there was one. What gives with it? What is tilth and how to create it without at least heavy machinery? That's going to be the main topic for the day, and there are many different ways to think about tilth, go about it, be about it. I don't think that last one works, but you know what I mean. Anyway, let's start with what I mean when I say tilth and why it's important. Tilth is the texture of the soil on the soil surface and how well that surface is prepared for growing crops. Like a hard cracked surface would be considered to have no tilth or poor tilth. It's hard, you can't plant into it without some serious disturbance. That's pretty poor tilth. Another version of poor tilth would be chunky soil that was maybe tilled when it was too wet. It kind of clumps together and forms big clods that would be hard to run a seeder through with any sort of consistency or uniformity. Clay, in particular, loves this trick. It does it pretty readily. Now, tilth is important for many reasons, but in particular, some crops require a better tilth than other crops, like carrots, for instance. They are a shallow germinating crop, relatively speaking, at about a 1/4 inch deep or less. Because of that, and because they can take a long time to germinate, it's preferable to have a flat surface and a light tilth so that the seeds can germinate and grow uniformly, but also so that things like the flame weeder will actually work, because when the soil is chunky, weeds can kind of easily hide under awkward crevices of chunky soil. In general, when directly seeding any crop, you want that same thing, a nice, flat, consistent soil surface. Certain crops, beans, corn, etc., that you directly sow but are bigger seeds tend to be more forgiving in that sense, but in general, you want nice tilth, but especially for crops like arugula, for instance, that you need a fine tilth to get the seeds into the soil, plus a level ground, usually done by rolling over the soil surface with a bed roller or something similar. That will not just help with germination and potentially cultivation, but harvesting as well if you're using something like the quick cut greens harvester. What you don't want is to harvest soil while you're harvesting your arugula. That's not great. People want it to come from the soil, but they don't actually want the soil to come with the arugula. Pro tip. But again, if the ground is chunky, you may end up harvesting a little bit of that soil. All of this is, of course, important context for the next segment, where we will actually get into the tricks and tools for achieving good tilth without tillage, or at least without deep mechanical tillage, because to be sure, that's how most farmers create tilth. They till the soil heavily and deeply, and it makes this nice fine tilth. This, of course, comes with all sorts of problems, though, from the degradation of the soil organic matter, the deconstruction of soil aggregates, unearthing of weed seed deposits, the slaughtering of earthworms, and so on. But when you are doing a lot of direct seeding or even transplanting, the attraction is immediately apparent. To the transplanting thing, it is not impossible to get a transplant into rough, somewhat hard soil, but it's not fun or easy, really. In fact, it's fairly slow and exhausting. I've tried pretty much everything in the no-till world at this point, and the one thing I really do not want to do is to transplant something small like lettuces into poorly prepared ground. It's just very time-consuming to plant a few hundred plants in a bed when the soil is tightly bound, even if they perform roughly the same. I've never done a side-by-side comparison in terms of their performance, though that might be an interesting trial. However, if the soil is healthy, but you do nothing on the soil surface to loosen those top few inches, yes, it's possible to transplant. Yes, it's possible to directly seed, but the juice is not likely worth the squeeze. Anyway, we're going to dig into the technical side after the break. Dig in was not a pun, just for the record. I make lots of bad puns, but that was just a happy accident. Anyway, BRB.
This is Sunflowers Community Garden outside of San Jose at the Latin American Biblical University. I just wanted to give a video of what it looks like when things are a little more beautiful. So, green onions and green beans, whole beans, leeks, a new bed of lettuce. This is a rainy season, which is a hard time to grow things, but because we're in El Nino, we're doing better this year because we have access to city water that we can use. So this is our bed that's just like gorgeous cabbage, kale, and basil. Probably you don't have this in the north. This is our yucca patch, our cassava patch. And then back here we have mulberries, which gave a really good crop right at the end of the dry season.
Today's episode is brought to you by Holden Tool Company. Holden Tool Company is a family-run business specializing in high-quality hand tools and small batch manufacturing for growers of all kinds. They offer forged hoes, forks, scythes, sickles, pruning tools, orchard tools, and forestry tools featuring traditional European designs that are hard to find at ordinary garden centers. These tools are practical, durable, and made for people who typically do work by hand. Holden Tool Company provides thoughtful customer service, helping you choose the right tool for your body, crop, or task. Find them online at farmandgardentools.com and use the code NTG26 at checkout. That's farmandgardentools.com. All right, back to the show. All right, so I've rambled on about what tilth is and why it's important, but less so about how to actually accomplish it without tillage. There are really two main ways to think about this, the long way and the fast way. In the long way, we're talking about the soil's natural ability to tilth itself, which is not really a verb, but bear with me. I say this often, but the soil is in a constant state of churn. We are far from the only ones who, quote unquote, till the soil. Microbes, earthworms, gophers, etc. are constantly churning the soil over, slowly, of course, and with less force than us, but the soil is rolling beneath our feet all the time, and that's especially true in healthy soils. And no doubt you have witnessed this when you peel back, something off the ground like a wooden board or something that's been laying there, and you see the soil is free of plants and looks sort of bubbly from worm castings. You can see lots of activity had gone on under there, good enough to plant into, in a sense. And utilizing the soil life under mulches and even synthetic means can work as a way to get the nice tilth that you need on the soil surface, essentially with enough organic matter for worms to desire, combined with a mulch of some sort or a tarp or whatever sort of opaque covering that you might have, plus moisture, the soil life will slowly work itself into a relatively plantable state. In warmer climates, you can see this happen over the course of a few weeks. In cooler or drier climates or cooler times of the year, it can take a while, but it is possible for the soil to do some of the work for you, which is yet another reason that mulches rule and bare soil does not. I thought that would rhyme. Of course, this biological slow method does not necessarily create a nice flat planting surface, but with a little raking, you can get an area leveled out pretty quickly. Then, of course, you have the fast ways. A fast way could be as simple as, a compost mulch layer, which itself pretty much comes in good tilth form. No need to go too much into how that works. Compost is made and then it's screened, so it's crumbly when it arrives. Nice tilth. Then a thin to thick layer of compost is spread over a clean garden surface, and voila. Instant garden. Easy. However, there are those of us who don't trust our compost, or like in my case this year, couldn't get affordable mulches because our spring was so dry here, which was not great for the mulch yields. And there are others who don't have good access to reliable compost or mulches, or those for whom, like a thick carbonaceous mulch, like a hay or a straw or whatever, doesn't really fit their growing system. Like if you're growing a lot of baby greens, a thick mulch is not super helpful. So what for them? Well, then you start to look at just a light surface manipulation with something as simple as a stirrup hoe going a few inches into the soil, and then the bed is raked clean and a bed roller is run over that just to kind of flatten it out and tighten it up a little bit. Or for a slightly more commercial scale approach, tools like the tilter or the power harrow on the BCS, or a tiller with a precision depth roller, meaning it only allows the tiller to go down a few inches on a bigger machine. All of those do a nice job. They work up the top 2 or 3 inches of the soil, get those amendments worked in, and a nice tilth is created sort of simultaneously, making it possible to transplant or sow crops relatively quickly. Again, I don't worry too much about the top 2 inches of the soil in terms of soil health. The majority of the soil life that you need to protect is around the rhizosphere, which is like 4 to 8 inches down. I don't worry about that too much so long as the soil is being planted right away and not left to dry out or wash away or blow away or whatever. On our farm, we use some or even all of the above. For certain crops, depending on the state of the soil, the tilter just makes sense. But also, oftentimes, I can just pull a crop, quickly run a stirrup hoe through it to kill any remaining weeds, rake it clean, and then replant it. And that goes fast, and it's all that I need. I do that often. Again, it's fast, it's easy, and it's low intervention. Or like it used to be when on our old scale, I would pull all of the garlic from its hay mulch, patch up any sections missing mulch, and then I would just go through and transplant our winter squash because the soil was happy and ready to go. In general, not only does the mulch encourage the soil life to create a little plantable tilth, but it's often at just the right moisture level to receive the plants, and it's adding a little nutrition to the soil, which is all a nice bonus. Okay, so this is a good example. This has been under tarp for a couple weeks since the onions came out, and you can just see how easy that is to pick up in your hand. So if I wanted to go through and plant, and I plan to plant lettuce in here, I don't really have to do anything to this soil. I can just pop a plant in there pretty easily. And same thing for direct seeding, but because it's got these like little mounds and stuff, I probably would still run the tilther over it just to smooth it out and make it nice and flat. Anyway, did I miss any options there? Let me know. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will take a mailbag question from our Patreon members about a Chinese wisteria wood chips mysteria. Okay, I added mysteria just because it felt right. Sometimes it just goes that way. Anyway, be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Good Agriculture. If the season is picking up and the pile of receipts is starting to grow, you're not alone. Good Agriculture handles farm bookkeeping so you can stay ahead of the mess before it piles up. They keep your books organized each month, help you understand what's coming in and what's going out, and show you where your farm stands so you can make better business decisions throughout the season. If you're behind, they'll help get everything caught up. They also help farmers find funding and stay ahead of grant deadlines. You run the farm, they help the business. Learn more at goodagriculture.com/info. That's goodagriculture.com/info. All right, back to the show. Okay then, if you are enjoying this podcast at all, consider supporting it. I know everyone is asking for money these days, but what I don't want to do is come on here at some point and say, surprise, we can't afford to do the show anymore. So if you do like it and you want to see it keep going, becoming a Patreon member is the best way to show that support. Anyway, we try to thank those who support us by answering their questions here on the show. And today's question is from Patreon member Matt Marshall, who writes, quote, alarm bell. That'll make sense in a minute. Sorry to use the bat signal, but we have an arborist coming tomorrow to clean up tree fall from a neighbor's yard that landed in our garden. The garden is fine, by the way. Not sure what we did to deserve that kind of luck. I usually have our tree guys leave me the chipped wood to use around the property and in our compost, but I noticed this tree has some Chinese wisteria wrapped up in the branches. I've been working pretty hard to keep weed pressure down, and especially invasive weed pressure, and I'm a little nervous about spreading the wisteria. I've dealt with other invasives, but never this one, so I don't really know how it spreads or how prone it is to germinate, either off of chunks of the vine or its flowers after it's gone through a shredder. Should I just pay for the arborist to come take it, or am I safe to risk it here in the name of free carbon, end quote. All right, and obviously I answered this question when it came in, as Matt threw it up with the bat signal, the alarm bell, which is my signal to try and answer a little bit there on Patreon when it comes in. Anyway, first off, lucky garden. That's good news. No one wants a tree crashing into the garden except maybe the saprotrophic fungi that live there, and they would probably enjoy that. But for most of us, it's less than ideal. So, all right, if you have the space and the arborist is going to chip up the wisteria, then piling the wood chips in an active compost pile covered with a tarp to prevent any chance of resprouting should be fine, as long as you are, vigilant about mowing around it to prevent anything from, like anything that maybe does resprout from getting that rich energy from the sun that it gets from its leaves. To be clear, I've never personally dealt with this situation or with Chinese wisteria, but that's what I would do based on what I know about Chinese wisteria. I would pile it, add some green materials or some sort of blood meal or fish meal or whatever, just whatever nitrogenous materials you have around. It could be grass clippings, and get it super wet and let it cook in a proper compost fashion underneath a tarp. If you just pile it as wood chips, it might be fine to use after a couple months, just occasionally checking for sprouts. But for me though, cooking in a covered compost pile for a while makes the most sense and gives you the best guarantee that the wisteria won't come back. Just be vigilant about any potential sprouting around the edges and pull the sprouts ASAP. Also, by keeping it and cooking it in the compost pile, that way you're not transporting a known invasive by sending it off with the arborist to take to who knows where. You're taking a little personal responsibility here and managing it yourself, which is good on you if that's what you decided to do. Anyway, some of you will have direct experience with Chinese wisteria, so let us know your all's thoughts. Otherwise, today, Tuesday, I think we are out of here. Important reminder that No-Till Growers is a nonprofit 501c3, so donations make our little world go round. We appreciate them deeply. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you are getting this podcast. That is a super easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Big thank you to Michelle. Big thank you to the No-Till Growers Board of Directors. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing, and my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at no-tillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you sign up in the month of August, you get a shout on the show. No new signups overnight, but that's all good. We will get back to what Darla and her team found in the compost pile tomorrow, signups pending. Otherwise, thank you all for watching. We will see you then.